Alright, so today's video is going to be how to remove the bed. Sort of a simple task, or at least so I thought when I started. But the first time I took this off, I could not get my carriage bolts out. So I ground them off and put in these grade 8 5/8 coarse threads. I think they're like 11 threads per inch. Bolts, and they look something sort of like this when it's fully assembled. So what I did was put a fender washer up top because there was enough room for that in all spots, and I only included a normal washer on the bottom because of the C-channel. It had to go on the inside of the C-channel and it wouldn't fit with the large fender washer. And I didn't use a lock washer because I knew I was going to take the bed off again, so I figured it was kind of unnecessary. I'll include sizes of the correct bolts at the end because there are 3 different sizes, of course, due to the humping of the what's in the thingy, the chassis. There we go. So they had large ones up front, sort of shortish ones in the middle, and a middle length one in the rear. And I think I got the middle ones just a tad too short to really put a lock washer on, but the other 2 were fine. So that said, what I'm doing is I'm putting my cheater up on top so that I can unscrew it or unloosen the whatever. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting my wrench up on top and bracing it against the side of the truck since I hogged out my carriage bolts. And if you don't hog out your carriage bolts and they still have the square broached hole, then by all means use those because it's a whole lot easier than having to go up and down 6 times to get the main bolts out of the bed. Well, once all these 6 bolts are out, then it's a matter of disconnecting these guys, which, swell enough, is just held on by these 4 screws there. I'm watching the camera and not the thing. And then this whole assembly just pushes in, and then what you'll do is, oh, I don't have a light, come hither. Then what you'll do is you'll push it down behind the mud flap, at least for the rear one, and it'll just hang there, supported if you like. Do the same for the forward one, except obviously it'll go forward of something or other. The first time I took this bed off, I did all that and it wouldn't come off. Well, of course I also disconnect the wires that are going into the bed. This is not a good example because someone has messed with it prior to my mechanicking, so I believe, yeah, these are all the ones on my truck, at least, that are going to the bed. I had to unplug those, and apparently I had to clip this one because that was hardwired into the bumper, which doesn't really make sense. Anyway, so the first time I took this off, I did all that disconnection, disconnected the rear and the forward filler tubes, and it wouldn't come off. Come to find out, this silly little mud flap support bracket, held on by a single very tiny bolt on both sides, was keeping my bed on. So be mindful of that. Likewise, any running boards, I had to remove my rear running boards for the same reason. So, The rear running, oh man, I really don't have light. Coming! I'm coming. Too far. So the rear running boards, on mine at least, were connected here. I had to take them off because the supports were these guys connecting to the running boards and then connecting to the chassis. That was not going to work. So pulled them off prior to all that nonsensory, and then the bed just lifts right up. Oh. Setting it down is a trick, but that's for later. Anyway, see how this goes. Rolling. So anyway, just underneath the front right corner of the bed, we've got the muffler. So that way is the front of the truck. And got my bolt, turning it off slowly. Because I don't have any lock washers on here, it's not held on by much, so I think I got it by hand now, but this side isn't so bad. Just need a 6 or 8 inch extension and go to town on it. Fun times had by all. And as I was saying about the ones forward of the gas tank, yeah, the rear gas tank ones, those are a little bit tricksy. Oh yeah, I didn't even have enough for a washer on those. So now that I got the light on the phone going, way back there, that is the middle right. It's just forward of the rear gas tank, and the exhaust is sort of majorly in the way. To get access from that from the bottom, I had to kind of pull and refund the exhaust to get it to get out of the way enough to actually get on the bolt or the nut. Expect that one to take a while to get it off. It's a challenge. The other side's not as bad, but it's not much better because you got all that stuff's in the way. And there it is, way in the back. I had to pull all those clampy things off the side of the chassis and whatnot to get those hoses out of the way, because then, you know, the blue and the gray, those are full of fuel, so didn't want those breaking. Likewise, any of the other electronics, electrical, there we go. And I think there might be a brake line up there. Definitely don't want to damage that. So, be careful on that one. Well, those two in general. The rear two are super easy. They're just hanging out in no man's land. Just because. So, I'm going to toil with that for a while and then see how things go from there when I get it off. Alrighty. Getting those off was a real pain. Well, that one and that one in the middle. These two weren't so bad. Yeah, I don't know how to make that any better. I think these are, the two in the middle are easier to get to from behind the axle. That one is almost worth taking off the exhaust from the muffler back, because there's a joint in the middle somewhere, just to have better access, because that was painful. Anyway, I used an impact on that side that seemed to work out okay, but the nut is all kinds of marred up from not being on correctly. On this side it wasn't so bad. Taking it off, putting it on required some finagling last time, but all in all not too bad. Just removed both fuel doors. I'm keeping them in the front and rear seats respectively, just so I know which one's which. And now both of these essentially just push down I'll do that with two hands. But as you can see, there's nothing in there, so it just pushes down below on ahead and behind the rear wheel. So that's pretty much it. Push those down and then I can pick up the bed because I've already disconnected the electricals in the back. So originally the bolts the carriage bolts that were in here were about a 1/2 inch. And I noticed that those holes were large enough to accept a 5/8 lag bolt, or whatever, grade 8 bolt. So I upsized it just for kicks and giggles. I haven't done anything to it. That's the stock size. There wasn't really any difficulty lining them up either with the bed because everything pretty much lined up exactly. One bolt was a little bit challenging to get in, but it was mostly because there's this, well, some of that's anti-seize, but there's a bunch of rusty, goopy stuff in the bed supports. So, where is it? Right on the front. So up in that hole, there was a bunch of gunk that I had to clean out to get the bolts in, and I didn't do a good enough job. Focus. And so that is the result. It just got a bunch of goopy gunk as I shoved the bolts through, and there was nothing I could do about it, short of pressure washing it, I think. But it wasn't the end of the world. Now that I got it off again, I'm gonna spend some time cleaning it out because that's annoying to deal with, and I'm sure it's not good for the threads. So yeah. So my final thoughts on all of this nonsense for getting the bed off of the truck is that that's more difficult than I thought it would be. It's definitely easier to grind the bolts off first as opposed to trying to remove them, but otherwise it wasn't too bad. Getting it back together is going to be a challenge, as always. It was last time anyway, particularly for these two bolts and those two corners. Those two back there are perfectly easy. These two up here, that one's not terribly difficult, even though it's in a corner, but it wasn't particularly easy either. That one was pretty easy. And like I said, it would be worth at least looking at taking the exhaust off because the bolt is in that hole right over there in the far corner, and there is like no good angle on it. So yeah, I would say take that off, assuming it's not completely rusted in place. But that's just me, and I'll probably do that next time. So, in short, that's how I took my bed off. Your results and mileage may vary. Let me know what you think.